You know, with everything going on in 2020, perhaps it's time for us to all reimagine education in America. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to talk to the director today of the documentary Reimagining Education in America, Director Willa Kammerer. How are you doing today, Willa?
Doing well, doing well. Glad we worked on camera issues. So nice to be here. Thank you.
So it's almost like a Zoom call or like all the kids being educated today remotely. We are, I mean, we are living in challenging times, right? So that's not even, a true assessment of the situation. Everything is being challenged. I think education, even before the pandemic, was facing a whole series of challenges. And I will say this, my girlfriend is actually a fourth grade school teacher, and she is teaching an entire room full of kids remotely over Zoom.
Wow.
I mean, the things that she has told me, she should sit in front of some Senate subcommittee about this. But you have made a fantastic documentary that really looks at all the challenges facing kids in their early education, which I think is so critical. What led you to want to make this documentary? I just think it's a very important topic that doesn't get enough attention.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words about it. Well, it was truly a collaboration through and through with the Schwartz Charitable Foundation throughout the production. It was their initial vision to tell this story, a much smaller story about the high quality pre-K program in Alabama. The state of Alabama has accomplished the #1 ranked pre-K program in the United States consistently for over a decade. And the Schwartz Charitable Foundation is very focused on early education and trying to invest in success and how do you create success. And so they were very interested in this program and wanted to highlight that. And that kicked off, beginning to film and do interviews around that program. And we just realized that there was much more of a national story that we needed to tell because this is really a national issue.
Well, I think the ages of the kids that you focus on, the pre-K education, is so critical, and those children cannot be taught remotely. I just don't see that there's a way to do that. And whenever I see a parent that's sort of given their kid an iPad or an iPhone to entertain them while they're out in public, I sort of cringe whenever I see that. This happens quite a bit in Los Angeles.
Yeah, definitely everywhere.
But exactly, it's just very disappointing to me. But I feel that early age, the pre-K, is so absolutely critical. Just as a parent myself, who has thankfully raised 2 children who are not assholes, which try to do that in Los Angeles, very difficult.
Well done, kudos to you.
But I think it's underestimated how important that pre-K education is, because effectively what you're doing with these kids, you talk about this in the doc, like you're kind of in a way like loading their firmware, right? Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, I think that's great because you're kind of giving them the systems and the supports that they need to learn how to engage as human beings, to learn how to collaborate and problem solve and share, and also to exist in a group, in a community that's a classroom. Teachers who have kids coming into kindergarten and first grade always observe, this is one thing that really came through in our interviews, it's so obvious to them who has been in a pre-K or other early learning setting, formal setting before coming into first grade or kindergarten, and those who haven't, because the ones who have they know how to exist in a group structure. They know how to share. They know how to listen to instructions. And for better or worse, it's how our society and successful world is set up. They're pretty important basic skills. So I love that idea of firmware. That the kind of basic operating system for just being a good person that gets instilled in them in those early years in that high quality setting. So thank you. We'll use that going forward.
Please, but also, it's interesting that this is now, I think, the 3rd documentary that I've looked at and filmmaker where I've talked about early education and how critical it is. And it reminds me of, I remember years ago seeing so many documentaries about the legalization of marijuana. Now you don't see so many documentaries about that because I believe that that problem's been solved or it's moving in the right direction. When will I not have to see more documentaries about this? And I mean this in a positive way. What I mean is that what are the challenges to, first of all, educating people that are decision makers how critical this is, and that this is a problem that needs to be tackled, but also where is this a state by state issue, and where can we have some positive progress?
Definitely, those are all great questions, and we certainly hope there doesn't have to be documentaries forever and ever about this issue. First and foremost, it's a funding issue. You can have all of the public will in the world and everybody saying this is really important, but until dollars at the state and federal level get invested behind it, and it's also been our partnerships from the business community, public-private partnerships, and really thinking differently about how we fund some of these programs, because I was on a call earlier today talking about this. I think there's just such a huge gap in the funding, say $3 billion allocated towards early childhood education, when it needs to be 50 billion. So we just need to begin thinking differently as a society about where this fits into our development and success. And I think begin bringing on board, amplifying the voices of allies who you wouldn't necessarily associate with this issue. For example, it's a national security issue. If we don't have citizens who can pass basic skills tests, who can pass physical tests, that's putting our country at a risk from that standpoint. And early childhood education has the power to, statistically, children become adults who are so much more successful and likely to be able to participate in our society in a meaningful way, not have issues with criminal records, and all of these positive indicators. So I think we need to start talking about that part of the story more as well, so that people really understand that it's not just about, of course, it's about children and parents and families and the education system, but it's really so much more.
Tell me about this program in Alabama that's featured in the documentary. What were some of the things that made that program so successful and attract national attention?
Definitely. So they have, I think one thing that we found really interesting from the beginning is that they really have all stakeholders involved. The business community is a huge advocate for it. And we actually found in our travels around the country, in a lot of more traditionally red and conservative states, that is a common theme, that the business community really sees the importance of early childhood education and is involved in it. So in Alabama, they've just developed this really strong structure around the program, and there's accountability and checks and balances built into the whole program, which helps ensure the high quality. The classrooms are awarded on a grant-based system, so local communities can apply, say, hey, we want to have a classroom. They put forth some funding, the state will put forth funding to match that, as long as they can meet all of the requirements, which are lengthy. And then throughout the lifetime of that program, they continually monitor the program, but they also have coaches who work with the program to help ensure its success. So they don't just turn them out by themselves and hope they're successful. They really invest in that success, even though the programs are run at a local level.
Well, one of the things my girlfriend always mentions in her teaching profession is the kids that are the most successful are the ones who have involved parents. Their parents are involved. If their parents read to their kids, if if they're aware of what the kids are learning and how they can be supportive, how can the doc reach beyond and reach to parents? And I think that, like, I feel for young parents now. I was fortunate at the time that my kids I had a job where I worked at home, so I could be an involved dad, a stay-at-home dad. I don't know that every parenting situation, those kids are as lucky. So how do we emphasize how important that parental involvement in early education for kids? How do we get that across?
I don't know the answer to that, but what you said is completely true. It's not rocket science. It's kind of the impact is huge of the very fundamental basic reading with children, engaging with children, playing with children, not just putting them on a device, but just bringing children around in parents' normal lives, whatever that looks like. Those are fundamental human lessons for how to go about the world that just can't be replaced, as you said, by remote learning. So how to get the message to parents, I don't know, but I will say that I think also particularly because of this time we're in our country with the pandemic and with people working remotely and learning going remotely and a lot of focus being on the education system and how they're going to handle these current circumstances, we've had a very strong and supportive audience of parents for this film, and we've been trying to meet that by sharing information and helpful articles and resources, and just look forward to continuing to grow a community around that, because we see that parents are really hungry for resources and getting involved in helping move this in a positive direction, because I think if they believed it was important before, I think this whole period of time has really helped to drive that home in a much more personal way for everyone.
Well, I think you have the subject for your next documentary. I think. Well, I feel like your doc would really benefit from like a parent's guide, to this. Where can people get more information about the doc?
Yeah, please. And know that this is all a work in progress. I love that idea. And, I think we'll put that in the queue to develop pretty quickly here. So anyone interested can go to the website startingatzerofilm.com. And from the website, there's links to all of our social channels on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But that's kind of a hub of information that will just continue to build out. Folks can view the film right now in theaters through September 30th, and then reach out to us if they're interested in hosting a screening. So we're here and we look forward to it.
Well, it's a very important topic, and I appreciate that you've put so much effort and work into this. And thank you so much. I feel like whenever I talk to doc filmmakers, I'm always taken aback because it's like doing community service. I've never met a documentary filmmaker who has a butler, for example. They're all just really, working for the passion. So thank you again. That's startingatzerofilm.com. I want to thank you, Willa Kammerer, for being on the Film Threat podcast. I also want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. If you go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat, there are all sorts of resources for independent filmmakers, including 1 million+ clips, stock footage. It's a great resource for filmmakers. Willa, thank you so much for being on the Film Threat podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.